Commander Zixtara of the Galactic Federation's Elite Marine Corps stood as tall as his 4-foot frame allowed, addressing his troops. His antennae twitched with anticipation as he prepared to deliver what he considered groundbreaking news. Attention, Marines. Today marks a historic moment in our illustrious careers. We're about to embark on a joint training mission with— He paused for dramatic effect, his multifaceted eyes scanning the room. A human. The silence that followed was punctuated only by the soft whirring of environmental systems and the occasional confused chirp from the assembled aliens. Then, as if on cue, the room erupted into a cacophony of excited buzzes, clicks, and what passed for laughter among the various species. A human. Lieutenant Blorp, a gelatinous blob of a being, gurgled incredulously. Commander, with all due respect, isn't that like inviting a supernova to a candle-lighting ceremony? Zixtara's mandibles clicked in amusement. Now, Lieutenant, let's not be speciesist. I'm sure our human compatriot will be adequately restrained. Restrained? Piped up Sergeant Squish, a tentacled creature whose species communicated through a combination of color changes and interpretive dance. Sir, have you seen what these Deathworlders do for fun? They jump out of perfectly good aircraft. The commander waved a dismissive appendage. Nonsense, Sergeant. I'm sure those are just exaggerated tales. Next, you'll be telling me they voluntarily ingest neurotoxins for recreational purposes. A chorus of nervous laughter rippled through the assembly. Little did they know how close to the truth they were. At any rate, Zixtara continued, our mission is to observe and learn from our human colleague. We'll be conducting a series of training exercises on the planet Zeta-9, a Class 3 death world. It should provide an adequate challenge for our guest. As the briefing concluded, the alien Marines filed out of the room, a mix of excitement and trepidation coloring their conversations. They had all heard the stories, tales of human endurance that seemed more like myth than reality. Now they were about to witness it firsthand. The dropship shuddered as it entered Zeta-9's turbulent atmosphere. Inside, the alien Marines were strapped into their seats, each encased in the latest model of environmental suits designed to protect them from the harsh conditions of a death world. At the center of the cargo hold stood a lone figure, seemingly unconcerned by the violent shaking of the ship. Staff Sergeant Sarah Ironhide Connor, yes. Her parents were big fans of old Earth cinema, stood with a relaxed posture, one hand casually gripping an overhead strap. Her standard-issue combat fatigues looked woefully inadequate compared to the high-tech armor of her alien counterparts. So Sarah drawled, her voice carrying easily over the ship's rumbling, "You fellas always dress up this fancy for a nature walk. Or am I just special?" Commander Zixtara's translator took a moment to process the idiom before he replied, "We are merely taking necessary precautions, Staff Sergeant. Zeta-9 is classified as a Class 3 death world. After all." Sarah's eyebrow arched so high it threatened to escape her forehead. "Class 3, huh? Sounds like a nice vacation spot. Got any brochures?" The sarcasm was lost on most of the aliens, but Lieutenant Blorp, who had made a study of human humor, purely for academic reasons he insisted, let out a series of amused gurgles. "I fail to see how a planet with gravity 1.3 times Earth standard, atmosphere rich in chlorine, and wildlife that considers most sentient species as hors d'oeuvres could be considered a vacation spot," Zixtara replied, his antennae twitching in confusion. Sarah's laughter filled the cargo hold, a sound that made several of the more sensitive aliens flinch. "Oh, Commander, you're killing me here. That sounds like a typical Tuesday back in basic training." Before Zixtara could formulate a response, the ship gave a final lurch and settled. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "We have touched down on Zeta-9. All personnel, prepare for disembarkation." As the ramp lowered, the alien Marines activated their suits' protective fields, creating a shimmer of energy around each of them. Sarah, on the other hand, simply adjusted her cap and strode forward, taking a deep breath of the chlorine-laced air. "Ah, smells like swimming pool season. You boys coming or what?" The aliens exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of awe and horror hidden behind their faceplates. Slowly they filed out after her, sensors on high alert for any sign of danger. The landscape that greeted them was straight out of a nightmare, or at least it would have been for most species. Towering crystalline structures that looked like a fusion of coral and glass stretched towards the vermilion sky. The ground beneath their feet pulsated with an unsettling rhythm, as if the entire planet were alive and breathing. Right then, Sarah said, clapping her hands together, "What's first on the agenda? Bit of orienteering? Capture the flag? Oh, I know. How about we find the biggest, meanest critter out here and poke it with a stick?" Sergeant Squish's tentacles writhed in distress, causing his suit to light up like a malfunctioning Christmas tree. "Surely you jest, Staff Sergeant. The wildlife here is incredibly dangerous. We should proceed with utmost caution." Sarah's grin was positively predatory. "Where's the fun in that, Sarge? Tell you what, how about a little wager? First one to bag a class of predator wins. Loser buys drinks back at the station." Commander Zixtara's mandibles clicked rapidly, the equivalent of a human spluttering in disbelief. Staff Sergeant Connor, this is highly irregular and extremely dangerous. We are here to conduct specific training exercise, not to engage in reckless. His words were cut short by a bone-chilling roar that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and from behind one of the crystalline formations emerged a creature that defied description. It was massive, easily the size of a small dropship, with a body that seemed to be composed of equal parts obsidian scales, pulsating flesh, and what looked suspiciously like living magma. Multiple rows of teeth lined Emulge enough to swallow a hover tank, and its numerous eyes swiveled independently, taking in the suddenly very still group of Marines. Well, hot damn, Sarah whistled appreciatively. Looks like we won't have to go hunting after all. The fun came right to us. The alien Marines stood frozen, their training momentarily forgotten in the face of such a monstrosity. Even Commander Zixtara seemed at a loss, his antennae drooping in what could only be described as resignation. Sarah, however, was already in motion. She unslung her rifle, a piece of equipment that looked comically undersized compared to the creature they faced, and started barking orders. All right, ladies and gentlespores, time to earn your hazard pay. Squish, I want you and your squad on distraction duty. Those fancy light-up suits of yours ought to keep Big Ugly's attention. Blorp, you and your jelly friends ooze around to the left flank. Commander, you're with me, we're going topside. To their credit, the alien Marines snapped out of their stupor and began to move. Whether it was the authoritative tone in Sarah's voice or simple self-preservation instinct, they found themselves following her orders without question. As Sergeant Squish's team began a dazzling display of color and movement that would put a rave party to shame, Sarah grabbed Commander Zixtara by what passed for his shoulder and started scaling one of the nearby crystal formations. Staff Sergeant Zixtara panted as they climbed, his suit's servos whining with the effort. I must protest this course of action. We are woefully unprepared for this level of engagement. Sarah's laugh was part exhilaration, part madness. Course we are, Commander. That's what makes it exciting. Now, when we reach the top, I'm going to need you to do your best impression of a very angry, very loud bug. Got it? Before Zixtara could voice his confusion, they crested the top of the formation. The creature below was thoroughly distracted by the light show Squish and his team were putting on, its massive head swaying back and forth as if mesmerized. Now, Commander, Sarah shouted, give me angry bug. To his own surprise, Zixtara found himself complying. He let out a sound that started as a high-pitched whine and quickly crescendoed into an ear-splitting shriek that set the crystals around them resonating. The effect was immediate. The creature's head snapped up, its multitude of eyes focusing on the pair atop the crystal formation. It reared back, preparing to strike. And that's when Sarah made her move. With a whoop that would have made her ancestors proud, she launched herself off the crystal, arms spread wide as she plummeted towards the beast's head. Staff Sergeant Zixtara's cry of alarm was lost in the wind as he watched the human plummet towards certain doom. But Sarah wasn't done surprising them. As she neared the creature, she pulled a small device from her belt. It looked absurdly like a child's toy compared to the advanced weaponry the aliens carried. With a flick of her wrist, she activated it, and a sheet of shimmering energy expanded into a wingsuit. She glided gracefully, adjusting her trajectory with minute movements until she was directly above the creature's largest eye. Then, with precision that would have made a surgeon envious, she deactivated the wingsuit and dropped the last few meters. The alien Marines watched in a mixture of horror and awe as Sarah landed feet first on the creature's eye. There was a sickening pop, followed by a roar of pain that shook the very ground. Sarah, not missing a beat, grabbed onto one of the beast's armored scales and began to climb towards its head, laughing all the while. "Come on, you overgrown iguana," she shouted, her voice somehow carrying over the creature's pain bellows. "Is that all you've got? My grandmother hits harder than you, and she's been dead for 50 years. The creature thrashed wildly, trying to dislodge the irritating speck that had taken up residence on its face. But Sarah held on with a grip that would have made a barnacle jealous, slowly but surely making her way towards the beast's other eyes. Meanwhile, the alien Marines had regrouped at the base of the crystal formation, watching the spectacle unfold with a range of emotions that their translators struggled to convey. Is this normal human behavior?" Lieutenant Blorp gurgled, his gelatinous form quivering with each impact as the creature stomped around. Commander Zixtara, who had managed to make his way back down to ground level, could only shake his head. I don't know. The briefing materials didn't cover this scenario. Sergeant Squish, whose colors had settled into a muted palette of disbelief, waved a tentacle towards the ongoing battle. "Should we not assist? She appears to be in grave danger." As if on cue, Sarah's voice rang out again. "Hey, Commander, remember that wager? I think I'm winning." The creature, now half blind and fully enraged, reared up on its hind legs, reaching heights that made even the towering crystal formation seem small by comparison. Sarah, still clinging to its face, let out a whoop of joy. "Now this is what I call a rodeo. Ye "Haw, motherfucker." What happened next would be debated in bars and briefing rooms across the galaxy for years to come. The creature, in its blind fury, failed to notice one of the larger crystal formations directly in its path. With a sound like 1,000 windows shattering at once, it collided headfirst with the unyielding structure. The impact was catastrophic. Shards of crystal exploded outwards, creating a deadly hail that pinged harmlessly off the alien's protective fields but elicited a string of colorful curses from Sarah. The creature staggered, dazed by the collision, and began to topple backwards. Sarah's exclamation was cut short as she lost her grip, sent flying by the creature's fall. She tumbled through the air, her trajectory taking her dangerously close to a particularly nasty-looking cluster of crystal spires. The alien Marines watched in horror, certain they were about to witness the gruesome demise of their human companion. But Sarah, proving once again that humans had more lives than a cat in a zero-G chamber, managed to reactivate her wingsuit mid-fall. She glided towards the ground, expertly weaving between the crystal formations with a grace that seemed at odds with her earlier reckless behavior. As she neared the stunned group of aliens, however, it became clear that her landing wasn't going to be as smooth as her flight. With a series of thuds, crashes, and what sounded suspiciously like gleeful laughter, Sarah pinballed off several smaller crystal structures before finally skidding to a halt at the feet of Commander Zixtara. She lay there for a moment, chest heaving, before propping herself up on one elbow and grinning up at the astonished aliens. So she panted, "Who's buying the first round?" It was then that they noticed, where Sarah's left arm should have been, there was nothing. Just a cleanly cauterized stump, courtesy of a particularly sharp crystal shard during her impromptu landing. "Staff Sergeant." Commander Zixtara's voice was a mix of alarm and disbelief. "Your arm. We must get you immediate medical attention." Sarah glanced at her missing limb as if noticing it for the first time. "Ha, would you look at that? I guess I won't be doing any one-armed push-ups for a while." She chuckled at her own joke, then winced. "Okay, maybe laughing isn't the best idea right now. Anyone got a Band-Aid?" The alien Marine stared at her in shocked silence. Here was a being who had just lost a limb, and she was making jokes. It defied all logic, all reason. It was human. Lieutenant Blorp was the first to recover. A Band-Aid. Surely you jest, Staff Sergeant. You require immediate evacuation and extensive medical procedures." Sarah waved her remaining hand dismissively. "Nah, it's just a flesh wound. Besides, we haven't finished the mission yet, have we? That big bastard's still breathing, last I checked." As if on cue, a pained groan emanated from the fallen creature, reminding everyone of the chaos that had just unfolded. Commander Zixtara's antennae twitched rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "Staff Sergeant Connor, I must insist that we abort the mission immediately. Your injury is not going to stop me from completing our objective," Sarah interrupted, struggling to her feet. She swayed slightly but managed to stay upright, her face set in a determined grin. "Now, who's got some duct tape? I've got an idea that'll make old One-Eye over there wish he'd stayed in bed today." The aliens exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of horror, admiration, and utter bewilderment. This human, this Deathworlder, had just lost a limb and was ready to jump back into the fray. It was madness. It was reckless. It was incredibly impressive. Sergeant Squish, his colors shifting through a spectrum that indicated both concern and grudging respect, stepped forward. "I believe I have something similar to this duct tape in my field kit, Staff Sergeant. But surely you don't intend to—" "Oh, but I do, Sergeant Squish," Sarah grinned, her eyes glinting with a mixture of pain and determination. "Now hand over that space-age sticky stuff, and let's get creative." As Sergeant Squish reluctantly produced a roll of advanced polymer adhesive from his kit, Commander Zixtara stepped forward, his mandibles clicking furiously. "Staff Sergeant Connor, I must formally object to this course of action. As your commanding officer for this mission, I order you to stand down and prepare for medical evacuation." Sarah paused in her efforts to fashion a makeshift tourniquet, fixing the commander with a look that could have melted titanium. "With all due respect, sir," she said, her voice deceptively calm, "I didn't come all this way to quit because of a little scratch. We've got a job to do, and by God, we're going to do it." "A little scratch?" Lieutenant Blorp gurgled incredulously. "You've lost an entire limb." Sarah shrugged her remaining shoulder. I've got a spare. Now, who's up for some extreme pest control?" Before any of the aliens could formulate a response, a deep, rumbling growl reminded them that their problems were far from over. The massive creature, having recovered from its collision with the crystal formation, was slowly regaining its feet. Its remaining eyes burned with a fury that made even the battle-hardened aliens take an involuntary step back. "Right," Sarah said, clapping her hand against her thigh. "New plan. Squish, I need you and your light bright brigade to run interference again. Blorp, remember that fancy goo you were telling me about on the dropship? The one that hardens on impact?" The gelatinous lieutenant bobbed in affirmation. "Yes, but it's highly experimental and perfect," Sarah interrupted. "You're going to be our artillery. Commander, I hope you're ready for round 2 of angry bug noises because we're going back up top." Despite their misgivings, the alien Marines found themselves falling in line with Sarah's plan. There was something in her demeanor, a combination of unwavering confidence and barely contained madness, that inspired both awe and obedience. As Sergeant Squish's team once again began their dazzling light show, Sarah and Commander Zixtara made their way back up the crystal formation. This time, however, Sarah's climb was significantly more challenging with only one arm. Staff Sergeant Zixtara chittered as they neared the top. "I feel compelled to express my admiration for your resilience. However, I must also question the wisdom of this endeavor. The odds of success are—" "Never tell me the odds, Commander," Sarah grunted, pulling herself up another few feet. "Haven't you heard? Humans are notorious for beating them." As they reached the summit, the full scale of the chaos below became apparent. Sergeant Squish and his team were engaged in an elaborate dance of light and movement, keeping the creature's attention divided. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Blorp and his squad had taken up positions around the perimeter, their forms undulating as they prepared to launch their experimental projectiles. "All right, Commander," Sarah said, her breath coming in short gasps. "Time to be the galaxy's angriest bug again, and this time really put your back into it." Zixtara, despite his reservations, found himself complying. He let out a shriek that started low and quickly rose to a pitch that set the surrounding crystals vibrating. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The creature's head snapped up, its remaining eyes focusing on the pair atop the formation. It reared back, preparing to strike. "Now, Blorp!" Sarah's shout carried across the battlefield. In perfect synchronization, Blorp and his team launched a barrage of gelatinous projectiles. The globs burst through the air, splattering against the creature's face and immediately beginning to harden. The beast roared in confusion and anger, shaking its head violently in an attempt to dislodge the rapidly solidifying goo. In its frenzy, it failed to notice that it was once again on a collision course with the crystal formation. "Time to move, Commander," Sarah yelled, grabbing Zixtara with her remaining arm and leaping from their perch. As they plummeted towards the ground, Sarah's wingsuit once again deployed, this time enveloping both her and the startled alien commander. They glided away just as the creature slammed headfirst into the crystal structure for the second time. The impact was even more spectacular than the first. Crystals shattered, raining down in a deadly hail. The creature staggered, its movements becoming uncoordinated as the hardened goo covered most of its sensory organs. Sarah and Zixtara touched down amidst their fellow Marines, who had regrouped at a safe distance. All eyes were on the towering beast as it swayed drunkenly, fighting a battle it had already lost. With a final earth-shaking roar, the creature toppled backwards, landing with a thunderous crash that sent tremors through the ground. It twitched a few times, then lay still. For a moment, silence reigned. Then, as if a spell had been broken, the alien Marines erupted into a cacophony of cheers, chirps, and color changes that would have put a fireworks display to shame. Ringdry, grinning from ear to ear despite the pallor that had crept into her face, turned to Commander Zixtara. "So how's that for a training exercise, sir?" The commander's antennae twitched rapidly as he struggled to find the right words. Finally, he managed. "Staff Sergeant Connor, in all my cycles of service, I have never witnessed such awesomeness," Sarah supplied helpfully. "Recklessness," Zixtara finished. "And yet, I cannot deny the effectiveness of your methods. You have given us much to consider." Sarah's grin widened. "Happy to expand your horizons, Commander. Now about that medical evac." As if on cue, Sarah's knees buckled. The adrenaline that had been keeping her going finally gave out, and the full weight of her injury came crashing down. Lieutenant Blorp, showing surprising speed for a gelatinous being, surged forward to catch her before she hit the ground. "I believe," Blorp gurgled as he supported Sarah's weight, "that it is long past time we got you proper medical attention, Staff Sergeant." Sarah, her face now ashen but her spirit unbroken, managed a weak chuckle. "What, and missed the after-party? I was just getting started." As the sound of approaching dropships filled the air, Commander Zixtara looked down at the injured human. Despite the gravity of the situation, he found his mandibles twitching in what passed for a smile among his species. "Staff Sergeant Connor," he said, his tone a mixture of exasperation and admiration, "I believe I speak for all of us when I say that your performance today has been enlightening. When you have recovered, I would be honored if you would consider conducting more joint exercises with our forces." Sarah, fighting to stay conscious, managed to quirk an eyebrow. "Careful, Commander. Keep talking like that, and I might think you're going soft on me." As the medical team rushed in and began preparing Sarah for transport, the alien Marines gathered around, each wanting to express their awe and gratitude. Sergeant Squish's colors had settled into a pattern that radiated respect, while Lieutenant Blorp's gelatinous form quivered with what could only be described as excitement. "You know," Sarah said as she was being loaded onto a stretcher, her voice weak but her spirit indomitable, "where I come from, we have a saying, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I guess I'm going to be a whole lot stronger after this, huh?" Commander Zixtara, who had been consulting his datapad, looked up with what could only be described as alarm. "Staff Sergeant, according to my research, the human body does not regenerate lost limbs. How can you possibly be stronger?" Sarah's laughter, though tinged with pain, rang out clear and strong. "Oh, Commander, just you wait and see. We humans have a few more tricks up our sleeves, or should I say, up our stumps." As the dropship's engines roared to life, preparing to whisk Sarah away to the advanced medical facilities orbiting the planet, Commander Zixtara found himself pondering the enigma that was humanity. They were reckless, yes, and prone to what any sane species would consider suicidal behavior, but they were also resilient, adaptable, and possessed of a spirit that seemed to thrive in the face of adversity. Perhaps, he mused as the dropship lifted off, carrying its injured but unbowed human passenger, we have more to learn from these Deathworlders than we realized. Lieutenant Blorp, overhearing the commander's musings, let out a series of amused gurgles. "Sir, with all due respect, I believe the appropriate human phrase is, no shit, Sherlock." As the alien Marines watched the dropship disappear into the vermilion sky, each of them knew that this day would be etched in their memories forever. They had come expecting to teach, but instead they had been taught a lesson in courage, determination, and the indomitable spirit of humanity. And somewhere in the vast expanse of the galaxy, in a bar filled with beings from 100 different worlds, a one-armed human regaled wide-eyed listeners with the tale of how she took down a class of predator on a death world with nothing but grit, sarcasm, and a roll of alien duct tape. The legend of Staff Sergeant Sarah Ironhide Connor was born, and the galaxy would never be the same again.